And we are live.
Live.
Welcome to episode 85 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf, and in the house tonight we've got say it again.
Say it right.
No,
First you
I'm going to leave
pronounce
that to you. It's your name, man. It's your name.
I might have to cut your heart out. No, it's me.
Uh, Bill Tazakotl?
Build us a Sequatl.
Bill
Something like that.
Tazakotl. Yeah. Okay.
I'm just trying to pay tribute to the
You're,
Aztec
you're
god.
you're doing a fine job. You're doing a fine job. No problems. So, I grew up, as did you, watching Mel Gibson.
Sure.
We grew up watching Mel Gibson. We grew up I personally, I'm speaking for myself now, but I grew up enjoying Mel Gibson movies.
Yep.
They were filled with action and humor, and they were just always something to look forward to in the 80s and, throughout the 90s also. Start in the 70s, really. You start out with Mad Max.
Yep.
And, you had other war movies like Gallipoli.
Oh, yeah.
And then he gets to, and I think he's been robbed of the first Christmas movie, which was Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon came out a year before Die Hard, but for some reason, and I love Bruce Willis, he's a local Jersey boy, and this is a New Jersey podcast. He gets all the credit for having the action-packed, nobody shows the Lethal Weapon marathon, on Christmas. It goes all to Bruce Willis and to Die Hard. Nothing against, like I said, Bruce Willis. But
I lean Die Hard, man. I lean Die Hard. But I know what you're saying. There was like rumblings this year saying that he was ripped off after years of pushing Die Hard as a Christmas movie. People are like getting a little bored with it, or they've seen it a billion times, and now I guess they want the Lethal Weapon.
I watched them both this year.
Okay,
but
I tried to watch Die Hard, and I'm a little pissy. I have an all regions Blu-ray player, and I bought a Blu-ray at a name brand store whose logo is blue and yellow. I won't say the store, and it won't play. I was so disappointed. Disappointed.
So
I'll try again next year.
I think I might have caught it on one of the streaming services. I think IMDb TV had it, and I just watched it on. Like, I have a copy on DVD. I don't have it on Blu-ray. Mm-hmm. I don't feel it's one of those movies you need on Blu-ray necessarily. I have a used copy on DVD, but it was on IMDb TV for the whole Christmas season, so I just watched it on that day. But then HBO was playing the entire Lethal Weapon.
Right.
They had them on Max, so I was just like, I could watch some Lethal Weapon, and I hadn't seen Lethal Weapon in 20 years.
Right.
So that was a lot of fun. Now, what ended up happening was, we say all that to say this: Mel Gibson got behind the camera.
Yep.
He went from in front of the camera to behind the camera, and he started to bring us movies like Braveheart.
Mm-hmm.
Which, what can you say bad about Braveheart? You can't.
Fantastic movie. Maybe a little bit historically inaccurate, but fantastic movie.
He started then to bring us We Were Soldiers.
Yep, that was a good one.
And then we got to The Passion of the Christ, which at the time was, I think, the highest grossing movie of all time. Before Avatar or, any of these other movies, there was Mel Gibson, directing this highly controversial movie that I own.
It scared the pants off of people is what it did.
Yeah, I think people actually had heart attacks in the theaters because it was so graphic. It's not an easy movie to watch.
No, it'll put you through the ringer. It's a real movie. It's a real work of art.
Yeah, and the original idea behind The Passion of the Christ was to play it without subtitles.
Yep.
In that sort of modernized Aramaic that they kind of used. And that the argument was, Gibson's original argument was that his movie was so visually profound that you could just understand it basically without the subtitles.
I'll say this. I watched Apocalypto on Tubi. And before I could figure out how to get the closed captioning working because there were no subtitles.
Oh,
I watched like the first 20 minutes of it just without, just like,
yeah.
whatever, I'll just watch it and see how it holds up. Held up fine.
Oh,
I
yeah.
followed the whole thing.
Yeah. And so again, after the Passion of the Christ, we come to Apocalypto, which is
Yeah.
what we're here to talk about today. It's been 16 years since Apocalypto. I can't believe it. But if you're ready to go, shall we get to it?
Sure, let's do it.
Boogie woogie.
All right,
So,
before we get started, let's dip back just a second. I just wanted to mention my favorite, well, not my favorite, but one that sticks out, one of the Mel Gibson movies from his oeuvre that we didn't mention, but I watched it over and over and over, and I still like it. It's his version of Mutiny on the Bounty. So
with Anthony
really good
Hopkins.
version of that. And I don't know why. It was just that time where it was on HBO all the time, and I watched it a million times. And it sticks out for me better than Lethal Weapon.
Okay.
I'll say
Okay.
it.
Yeah. He had, well, I mean, there's The Patriot. There's no shortage of movies that he was a part of that are fucking phenomenal. I mean, he was the it guy. He was a consideration. He was one of the original considerations to play the Terminator in James Cameron's original movie, because what Cameron had in mind was what he actually did in the second movie, which was make the Terminator an everyman, like Robert Patrick, someone who wouldn't stick out. And then he had a conversation / meeting with Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was reading for the role of Reese. And he didn't like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He had sort of made up his mind about Arnold, that he wasn't going to like him. And so the plan was to just sort of, be disagreeable with him and then say, sorry, this just hasn't worked out. But then he met Arnold and realized he wasn't just some steroided musclehead. And this was actually a very intelligent man. And that it wasn't Kyle Reese, it was the Terminator, which changed the whole platform, because the Terminator became this gorilla, this 300-pound, muscle-bound, gorilla who just looked like he wanted to, tear your heart out with his bare hand. He looked like he could actually do it.
Yeah, lucky for us, because I think that first Terminator is brilliant, and it wouldn't have been brilliant without Arnold
Schwarzenegger. Yeah,
I would have been interested in seeing Mel Gibson somewhere in there, though.
Well, we know that Mel Gibson can play a cold-blooded bastard.
I could imagine him, at least in his young years, playing that. Is it Salvation? The one with Christian Bale and the guy who was turned into a Terminator but didn't know it, and they had to prove it to him. I could see that.
I could have seen him in the second one.
Mel Gibson, but he would have to be a young Mel Gibson.
I could have seen him in Robert Patrick's version, Terminator 2. He could have been the T-1000. I wouldn't have had. I don't think anybody would have had any trouble with that.
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger versus Mel Gibson. That would have been a fantastic role, because at that time Robert Patrick was really kind of an unknown.
Right.
That was the movie that sort of brought him into the, and now, every time you see him, he's older now. It's been 30 years, but you're like, oh, it's Robert Patrick. All right, I'll watch this. Because, it triggers that memory from 91, when you watch him go at it with Arnold.
Yep.
But Gibson, on the other hand, like we said, moved behind the camera. And now he's, he had a 10-year hiatus from, that sort of meltdown blacklisting that he's had to go through. But he came back strong with Hacksaw Ridge. And it looks like he might actually, I'm seeing now that he might actually direct the final Lethal Weapon movie now that Richard Donner has died. He's looking to do the follow-up to The Passion of the Christ.
Yeah, I'm interested.
He's a hell of an artist.
He is, and he's one of those guys that makes you want to overlook his his
shortcomings,
crazy side, his shortcomings, because every artist has them. It's just how well do they hide them? And I think no one was covering for him after Passion of the Christ. They wanted to see him fall a little bit.
It wouldn't surprise
it'll
me.
happen, but he was going to do some Civil War movie. I remember him doing interviews, and he had the mutton chops and the beard, and I thought, oh man, that's going to be good. He just disappeared.
I've said this all along, and I've said this before we were doing the podcast, that fucked up people make the best art.
Yeah,
the guy or girl that does your taxes is not on your playlist.
Yeah,
they're not directing your favorite movie.
Yeah,
but why? Because they're probably a squared away person or a reasonably squared away person, who excels at this one thing. So they do one thing and then they do it well. But making art doesn't equate necessarily to a balanced life.
Yeah.
It usually equates just the opposite, because the majority of your self goes into this whatever format that it is that you excel at, and other things sort of fall by the wayside in one respect or the other. And we've talked about this over and over again. The graveyards and cemeteries are filled with actors who just couldn't get over the hump.
Frank Zappa said that a lot about his last band. He had a bass player named Scott Thunes who was just drove everyone else insane from being such a wacko, but he's a great bass player, and I just saw him over the summer. But case in point, if you're going to excel at art, something's going to suffer. And I guess for Mel it was choice in women and being a little loosey goosey with the anti-Semitism when he gets drunk.
And I think he's I think he has a ongoing, well, I don't think it's ongoing anymore, but recorded battle with alcoholism and all these different things. So there you go. Foster's, man. There you go.
Yeah.
So that brings us to Apocalypto. One of the things that I notice in almost all Mel Gibson movies is that whether he's in front of the camera or behind it, there's always a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
There's always, like the Martin Riggs character was just this long suffering, tormented person. There's a lot of physical abuse. And so many, Braveheart. I mean, it's just horrendous. Injustice and torment going on. The Patriot was kind of the same way. It was the same with Mutiny on the Bounty, the one that you just brought up, all these different movies. And now when he gets behind the camera, a lot of the characters that he portrays in his film, also endure a lot of savagery.
That was a big criticism of Mel Gibson in the wake of the Passion. They said that it was a bad thing, but I can't see it as that. I think whatever demons he's carrying around compel him to make great characters as an actor. He makes great choices as an actor, and he made great choices as a filmmaker. It just whatever's drives him to these suffering characters and martyrdom and all that. It just paid off.
I think that what happens is if you come at it from a secular perspective, then you just see it through this sort of narrow lens.
I think
you don't see the broader context.
Well, there's
because I saw so many reviews who bagged the Passion of the Christ, as like torture porn, and these sorts of things, and like people got angry. I think it was Maureen Dowd I'll never forget Maureen Dowd from the New York Times said it made her want to kick someone in the teeth. And you were just like I don't think you got it.
Because they focus in on the bad and they don't see the end result, which is this redemption or this going through it to get to a better place. Which
he rises at the end.
Those movies.
Yeah, he overcomes at the end.
Except for climax. He'll walk in the desert and is reborn as Tom Hardy.
All right. Well, let's get to Apocalypto for a second.
Right.
Now, I thought that this was just from the first time I saw it. I don't think I saw it in the theaters for some reason. I didn't follow up, or maybe this. I think this arrived at the time that he had the blow up. So I waited until it was right after he had the blow up. Then he released this, and I as I remember specifically, it didn't get a lot of like it wasn't like heavily released.
Right.
It was just, they kind of, it's him, suddenly it was, oh, it's him, and then you barely got to, find it in the theaters. But I saw this on DVD when it came out at the time, and I was blown away.
Yeah, as well you should be. It's
This
literally a perfect movie. If you
yeah,
look
this
at
is
it if you look at it from a purely objective standpoint, there is not a bad thing in this movie at all.
it is epic action. And I
Yeah.
tried to get Ryan on here, but we couldn't coordinate it because of the snowstorm. I wanted him to screen it, and then we could bring him in here, but we could. Well, that was the night the snowstorm came,
Yep.
so it wasn't going to happen. But what a flick!
Yes.
What a goddamn movie! This was co-written by another man. It was co-written by Mel Gibson and another man called Farhad Safinia, and he said, well, we wanted to update the chase genre by, in fact, not updating it with technology, gee, imagine that, or
Right.
machinery, but stripping it down to its most intense form, which is a man running for his life, and at the same time getting back to something that matters to him.
Yeah.
Mel Gibson said they wanted to, quote unquote, shake up the action adventure genre, end quote, which he felt was dominated by CGI, stock stories, and shallow characters, and to create a foot chase that would feel like a car chase that just keeps turning the screws.
Gee, and he said that before the MCU came around, so it just went further into that.
Yeah, this was 2 years before the MCU, when Tony Stark arrives as Iron Man in the MCU. I like that movie, don't misunderstand me, but he's absolutely right. 16 years ago, Mel Gibson was saying too much CGI, stock characters, boring repeats, and now we're fully into the cyclone of repeats and reboots and endless sequels. And yeah. Just stock character.
It's a completely original idea or a completely original take on typical tropes.
Yeah.
There's nothing, there's only six stories that are retold, but this one just takes that one story and just completely reworked it into a brilliant gem. It really is good.
Yeah. Wholly original. He said the Mayas were far more interesting to us. You can choose a civilization that is bloodthirsty, or you can show the Maya civilization that was so sophisticated with an immense knowledge of medicine, science, archaeology, and engineering, but also be able to illuminate the brutal undercurrent and the ritual savagery that they practiced. It was a far more interesting world to explore. Why and what happened to them. Now, we sat here and did our top 10, favorite horror movies. But something I've been saying for a while now, especially as, you and I have spoken over the past 20 years in a post 9/11 world about the state of the world and the state of, the country or whatever. I've said this repeatedly now, as I get older, and probably in the past 15 years, I've been saying it. What people do is far scarier to me in the movies nowadays than anything supernatural.
Yes.
Is Danny Glick scratching at the window in Salem's Lot scary? Yes. Is this scarier? This is a fiction. This is a fiction. You're looking at the decline and collapse of an entire civilization, an age-old civilization, ages-old civilization, through the lens of one village, one family, and down to its barest essential, one man.
Yep.
And it's horrifying to watch. This is, in many respects, a horror movie, and I feel it really deserves its place here, on the show.
Yeah, it definitely is in both the gore and in the horror aspect. It just has a chase, and I kept thinking, oh, Jeepers Creepers, that's kind of a chase movie, the modern horror type, but it still falls in with this movie.
Yeah.
And definitely, you could take this movie, you could take this story and wrap it up in ancient Rome. You could wrap it up in any one of the Chinese dynasties. You could wrap it up in any culture that you like, and it would still make sense. Cultures come and go, they rise, and then they corrupt themselves. And
Yeah.
this is it's sort of a juxtaposition between someone who's living the original way, the original life that you should, and and they're compared to this corrupt thing that is grown up out of the
This
culture.
institution.
Yeah.
This sort of institution, as opposed to who are living in these enormous metropolitan centers, versus this sort of small village
Yeah.
or town, by comparison in more modern terms, sort of small town, village, with like 100 people living in it, living off the land, fishing, hunting, sense of community, storytelling together, sense of humor, hierarchies going on. Yes, of course, but hierarchies in a good sense,
Yeah.
and that the go ahead.
It's country mouse versus city mouse. It's
Yeah.
it's simple as that. Going back
Yeah.
to kids' tales.
And the beginning of the movie starts with this saying that no country or civilization can be destroyed, or can be conquered without, before being destroyed, or something along those lines within.
Yeah.
It has to crumble from the inside first before someone can come along and really take it over.
Yep.
Which is exactly what happens here. You're introduced to this the main character of the story, this man, Jaguar Paw, who's the young son of the elder, who himself is a father and a husband, and he lives as part of a village community, played by Rudy Youngblood. The only movie I've ever seen him in, Rudy Youngblood, and I thought he did a fantastic job in this. And you're introduced to his father, Flint Sky, these native people that are living somewhere in South America, maybe 500, 600, 700 years ago. They live well together. Like we said, sense of community, hunting, sharing, and then the opening scene is this chase scene. They're chasing this pig down. Yep. That's the opening scene in the movie. They're chasing a pig down. They're hunting. They run the pig into a trap and kill it. As they are dividing up the meat, they run into another group of people from a village that they're not familiar with, who basically say that their land was taken from them. Their lands were ravaged, which sets up one of the themes of the movie, which is fear. In that Jaguar Paw is greatly upset by this. Like he's really rattled to see these people, because they're bruised and they're beaten and they're bloodied, and they're sort of run out of their village. You can tell he's never seen anything like this before.
Right.
Where his father warns him, not to let fear take root inside of him. Because it will just eat away at you, and you really can't defeat it. The minute you start to entertain fear, you've already lost. You can't do it.
I didn't have that as much as I did on rewatching this. It didn't strike me as much the first time I saw this. The lesson of fear. Now in 2022, when so many people are afraid all the time, and you see how it affects them, that little sort of passage in the movie was really, really powerful. A lot more powerful than it was when it first came out. At least for me.
Yeah, and you get to meet. I mean, it's recurring throughout the movie. Because the things that he's afraid of come to pass.
Right.
1,000 times worse than he could have predicted.
Yep.
And he's forced to confront those things. It's nothing that gives him any advance notice or warning. I mean, essentially what happens is his entire village the next morning is just destroyed.
Yep.
It's destroyed. People are being murdered by slavers. Um, it's this barbaric thing, where people are being, beaten and then hog-tied and, attached to poles, and, the women are being raped.
Mm-hmm.
It's a horror story. The old people are being killed. His father is killed. It just descends into this long drawn out scene of like sadism and cruelty, far worse than what he was expecting. And it's again, coming right off the heels of the Passion of the Christ. Gibson's made another movie that's visually kind of tough to watch.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. It's not a. This isn't. I mean, Armageddon is an adventure movie. Pirates of the Caribbean is an adventure movie. This is sure an adventure movie in a sense, but it belongs in a different category.
Yeah, I'd put it up there with like Green Inferno, Eli Roth, or any one of those torture porn movies. But this has more weight to it. It's not gore for gore's sake. He's really trying to say something and set you up with this, because there's no payoff if you aren't as horrified as they are.
Yeah, and this all happens within the first 25 minutes, 30 minutes. I mean, the exposition is really drawn out. The night before all this happens, he goes to that community meeting where the village elder is telling the story of that being who has a hole inside of him, a man.
Yeah.
Who has a hole inside of him that no matter how much he gets, he has everything that the world can offer. He's already received it, but he can't be content. It just needs to keep feeding the hole more and more until finally, the world itself just gets tired of him and just kind of wipes him right off the planet, right out of existence.
Yep.
It's consumed by an emptiness, that can't be satisfied despite having all the gifts of the world, will continue to blindly take until there's nothing left in the world and the world is just gone.
And that's a common theme too. You find that in religion, and you find it in ancient people's wisdom. It's something that people and civilizations across the world have encountered and realized over and over, and yet we can't help ourselves as humans. We always go way too far.
Well, I mean, look at it today. If you were to look at like in a Steve Pinker sort of sense, Enlightenment Now, 15 trend lines, global poverty rate, infant mortality. He says according to those trend lines, the world has never been better.
Right.
And yet more people seem more unhappy than ever. Like, no matter what, I'm like, you have everything.
Yeah.
And yet people are just.
I was just talking about this the other day. It's that, wow, crap. What's the comedian? The red hair, bald, got in trouble for.
Louis C.K.
Yeah, Louis C.K. He had that bit about how everything's awesome and everyone's miserable, and you're up in the sky in an aluminum tube, and you're not amazed by it. You're complaining about the snacks, or the water.
Absolutely, and that was these were the things I was. This is what I was thinking about as I was watching this.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's on their $1,200 phone, with access to pretty much every piece of information that's ever existed, but couldn't be more unhappy.
Right. Because we're feeding our fears and we're feeding our avarice and our greed and all that.
Yeah, and everything that refuses to nurture us. Any of the things that nurture us are the things that, just completely get pushed right off the table because you got to have this immediate thing.
Yeah.
Right here that moves, faster than the speed of light. And if it doesn't, then everything sucks.
Yeah. And as humans, we're just drawn toward the evil. It's never ending.
Yeah, it's like having a never-ending conversation with a 12-year-old. How they're always in that constant state of discontent.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what, it's never good enough. Oh, this sucks. Don't tell me I have to do that. And you're just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So this man is separated from his family in the course of one day. His father is killed. He manages to hide his wife. And they are essentially dragged off into slavery.
Yep.
these heartbreaking scenes of the children that are separated and trying to follow until they reach that one water source that they can't cross.
Yep.
It's just heartbreak after heartbreak, and these men are screaming because they're watching their wives being raped, pretty much right in front of them. They're going to be killed. Um, it's a hell of a thing to witness. I mean,
Yeah.
he really goes for it here. Gibson really, really goes for it. He holds
What's the
nothing
point if
back.
you're not going to?
Huh?
What's the point? What's the point if you're not going to go for it in that kind of story?
Yeah, yeah. Which I mean, I suppose if you're doing some sort of Chuck Heston, El Cid sort of thing, it's got the trumpets and the DeMille, but you're sort of missing out on the things. Well, I guess back then you couldn't make a movie like that, and by and large, nobody else is.
Yeah.
By and large, nobody else is making movies like this. So even by today's standards, you've got one, maybe two filmmakers that are really going right to the wall with it.
Yep.
They come to the and then where it starts to turn where they meet that little girl.
This girl. Oh, what a good scene, man. I loved it.
Yeah, they wonder there's plague. Apparently, there is sickness or a plague, some sort of plague going on, and they recognize or think that this girl has it. So she's trying to approach them, with this sort of hands outstretched, like this small kid, and the slavers are pushing her away with the clubs.
Yep.
And then one of them really hits her like in the chest with it. It like hits her hard. And we talked about this when we talked about the prophecy with that little girl, who switched to the Korean war vet, voice. I thought this girl did it better, though. I mean, because it's just a completely different context. There's very little comedy in this movie. It's gone within the first 10 or 15 minutes, and she just tells them that they're all going to die. All of you who are vile, you're with the person who's going to bring about your death. He's going to take you to people that are going to dig out the sky and scratch out the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way that her whole effect.
Yeah, I don't know what he's trying to say. If she was really possessed by some kind of spirit, or if or what inspired that. But it was such a good scene, and it's funny. She's talking about that thing that is going to end your world.
Yeah.
And she's there with smallpox. This is the thing that was getting me. It was like, I don't want to be a spoiler, but in the end, we see the Spanish rolling up onto the beach, but they were already there, the Spanish, long before the boats hit that harbor, and long before the conquistadors rode up on that beach. The Spanish were there because that's the smallpox that was ravaging them. It was a disease that they had never seen, and obviously it was making its way to the scene of this movie.
Yeah.
And boy, oh boy, that was just brilliant scene.
There are multiple things that are going to end up bringing these people down.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be the Spanish? Yes. Is it going to be the illness? Yes. Are they doing it to themselves? Absolutely. Absolutely. Obviously, clearly, the leadership is just, they're bleeding themselves dry. They are the being that no matter how much they have, they just refuse to be satisfied. Yep. And instead of, they could be like princes of the world. Instead, they're like enslaving everybody, and just working people to death when they finally get to those lime pits, and that man is just like drooling blood. Yep. From having to inhale all that lime, and there's dead bodies laying everywhere, and the children are playing in shit, and it's foul.
Yeah, and you imagine that that's what the scene of modern poverty in Latin America is like, with the very rich and the very poor, and it's just trying to show that it's been there forever, because you had all these idle rich people sitting around enjoying the show and watching the
eclipse
going on the pyramid, and then they're literally right next to people dead in the streets in the mud.
Yeah, insane people just, they said that one man had the laughing sickness, but I think he was just insane from, the suffering,
He could
that
have had, he could have had Alzheimer's,
yeah, hold on a second. We got a couple of comments. We got Nazir Bowman. He's saying, "What's up, Mr. Mike? What's up, Nazir? Good to see you, man. Thanks for stopping in." And we got Eric. Eric's in the house. He says, "Sorry I'm late. Didn't get the chance to watch this, but I heard Mike just say, scratch out the earth. You have my attention." Eric, this is playing on Tubi. And Bill, would you recommend this moving to the front of Eric's? I mean, barring any, podcasting obligations he might have, would you put this to the front of Eric's list?
Oh, 100%. If you haven't seen this, this is a movie that must be seen. It's not a genre movie. It's just a movie that has to be seen.
Yeah. And we were just saying, we actually believe that, and Bill said it, but I agree with him. I think it's a perfect movie.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. And you can't have the kids around. It's not make sure the kid's sleeping. It's a very hard and, graphically brutal movie, but it is fucking amazing, and it's on Tubi right now, so you can catch it. Now, this is a movie that I actually have on Blu-ray. I don't have Die Hard on Blu-ray, but I got this. But I do have Die Hard on DVD, so give me a little break. We get there to this major metropolitan center. Although Eric, we don't want to hit you in any spoilers either. So,
go away, Eric.
Yeah, Eric, get out of here. Go. Turn on Tubi. Yeah, get on Tubi right now. Don't listen to us. Hold on a second. He's back, and he said, I just added it to my Tubi queue, and I watch it this weekend based on that type of recommendation. Okay, but if you're here, you're going to catch spoilers, and I don't think this is a movie that you should have spoiled for you. That's just my opinion. You're welcome to hang out anytime, of course.
It's true.
Wait, hold on. Said, no worry, spoil away. I'm out of here. All right, so he's gone. All right, good. You see you tomorrow, man. I'll see you tomorrow. We're on for the show tomorrow. So we get to
the city, the big city.
Yeah, and oh man, it's a mess.
Now, what's weird about it is that cities, at least in the ascendancy of a culture, are places of great innovation. It is the pinnacle of civilization and culture, and you're sort of showing that off. But at the same time, it's like, it's like sausage. Everyone loves to eat sausage, but no one wants to see how it's made.
Yeah,
and this movie is showing how the sausage is made. 100%. It's like you're taking a peek behind this grand civilization and seeing that, it wasn't all, peaches and cream.
Far from it. And, like we said in the beginning of the episode, sure, were the Mayans responsible for technological advances? Yeah. Did they have these intricate pieces of architecture in place? Absolutely, 100%. Were they also committing human sacrifice? Yeah. Were they cutting people's hearts out, while they were alive? Absolutely. Beheading people? Yeah. Selling people into slavery? It's an awful thing to watch. And what was most heartbreaking to me, is the mother-in-law.
Right.
And you start out sort of, this comic sort of laughter about the mother-in-law because she's busting the one guy's chops because she blames her son-in-law for not having grandchildren.
Right.
And so she's sort of a nag.
Mm-hmm.
But then by the time my opinion on her has done like a complete 180. And I found, because you have to be like, I don't know, Hannibal Lecter or somebody not to feel something for these, for these people that are, that this is happening to. But then they get her to the slave market and no one will buy her.
Right.
Because she's too old. And they're like, come on, she can cook, she can clean, somebody give me a couple of pennies for her. And nobody will take her. And they cut her bonds and they just cast her out.
Yep. So, that is where human life is entirely worthless.
Yeah.
It's really a bad moment when, you see her face.
Yeah.
And you're like, she's not worth anything. It's just like, get out of here.
Get out of here. She's not like, they don't even have the thought to, and you could say that this is barbaric, but just to put her out of her misery.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want that. Don't misunderstand. I wouldn't say that that would make it a better movie. It'd be far more horrible. But you know, I'm just thinking about all these things, and I'm just, what the hell?
Yeah.
It's just like she's
It's
just
just
gonna wander the
it's just
streets.
one
She's gonna,
brutality piled on top of another. This whole thing, this
yeah,
whole sequence when they get to the city and the streets are muddy and running with blood, and uh, you see the slaves building these great temples, and they're dying of lung disease, which you could say was the coal miners in
yeah.
Kentucky or any number of places. I
Well,
mean,
there are
this movie is chock full of parallels that we can see in every bit of history. At
throughout
least
history. Yeah,
being a
throughout.
history guy,
Yeah,
it's just
throughout all
it's just
recorded history, you could overlay this in any number. And I think maybe at the beginning, or before we got maybe it was in the beginning, you picked out a number of civilizations
yeah,
that
it's
have just sort of died off.
uh-huh.
And you,
It's a valid movie in the Roman Empire,
yeah,
the Industrial Revolution in England.
yeah,
It's the same everywhere you go.
yeah. But for me, that was the worst.
Mm,
And she's trying to follow her son-in-law, and then it gets to the point that she can't go any further, and you just never see her again, and she's going to die.
yeah.
And it's just, you're like, that's unbelievable, and that's a testament to unbelievable writing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could have just like killed her in the beginning, like in the raid,
Yeah.
but to have had the forethought, to include her, and then 2/3 of the way into the, let's say like the raid happens at 25%. By the time you get to like 60%, 70%, the story, bring her back in, just for this one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean,
Brilliant writing.
yeah, and
It's the
that's a
kind
Mel
of
Gibson too.
it's the kind of exposition that 90% of the movies out there just lack. And they would have to bring in some other character to be exposition man to
Yeah,
explain where you're at instead of showing it, instead of you
yeah.
seeing it play out in front of you. You know, you need the narrator or
Well, we had
some
talked
type of narrator.
we had talked about this when we did Hereditary, and I was saying
Mm.
that,
Hmm.
you were saying that it's very, and I had made a clip about that recently, and I posted it up about, how hard it is to find good movies
Yeah,
like this with good writing and great direction,
yeah,
because everything has become this cookie cutter thing. I mean, they had already released this last Halloween movie, and I think before it even like made it into the second or third week, they already had announced the next one.
right.
And you're just like, what the hell, man?
Yeah,
What do you guys do? Like, I can't get, I have to go 45 miles to go see Macbeth, 824.
right.
Cohen's, Denzel Washington, Frances McDormand, Brendan Gleeson. I have to go 45 miles to Philadelphia.
Yeah,
But Scream, I think they both had the same release date. Scream was playing 11 times that day
yes.
at my local multiplex.
That is so annoying. I feel the same way. We're lucky we have a semi art theater about 12 or 13 miles away from us that plays some of those movies. But yeah, I had to drive 35 miles to see The Road when it came out, and I can't remember what it was playing
I had
against.
to go to Philadelphia.
Yeah,
I remember I've gone all the way to New York City. This was a long time ago. I don't do that anymore. But I would literally take the shuttle bus into New York. It was like $30 round trip because certain movies just never played here.
hmm
And I was like, really? I've got, and like, this was, I would, this was a long time ago. I was working with kids in a completely different place, but I would take a paid day. Like, yeah, I'm not going to be in today. I got something I got to do. Yeah, I got to go see this movie is what I got to do, man. But,
yeah.
you got to travel 2-3 hours nowadays to catch a,
To find a quality flick. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. They don't make it easy on you, man. So, we're dicing and slicing.
oh boy.
And yeah, it's not fun to watch. And then again, in another testament to how decayed this society is, the people that they don't sacrifice, just get rid of them. So they just kill him in like almost like a baseball game.
A little
You know,
little target practice for
yeah,
your hit squad.
Yeah, just run, and we're just gonna keep throwing shit at you until we hit you. But then there's a guy all the way down at the goal line, and he's got a huge wooden mallet, that he's gonna bash your head in. So even if you do make it to outside of range, this guy's going to get you anyway. I mean, these people are fucked.
But it's a great setup for the major chase.
Yeah, yeah,
it's great because you have to get through the precursor and then make it to the jungle, and then the chase really begins.
Yeah, and what you think is going to be the end, in which several of the characters that you've been with from the beginning actually do die, either from the sacrifice or during the chase. Jaguar Paw makes it and kills that asshole leader's son. Stabs him right in the neck with that arrow. And I mean, he catches an arrow like right in the side or something. So, he has to it's running all the way through him, and he's got to break it off and then pull the tip out, and he stabs him right in the neck. And you're absolutely right. That's when the real chase begins, because he's also hidden his wife. He was, and this is like something out of Jocko Willink. He's the first one up in the morning. So the first thing he does, he realizes that the raid is coming first. He has the forethought to scurry his wife and child down into that well.
Yep.
He was up first, and he kind of sees that. He's like, what is that? And he, those few couple of seconds, give him that. And so that's another thing that we talked about. He has something that he's running towards also.
Yeah, that is a major part of the motivation. He's not just running away. He's running to something.
Yeah, he's trying to save his family, who he's managed to stash at the bottom of this well. His wife is pregnant with a baby on the way. He already has a young son. So he's trying to save his family, which I think, empowers him quite a great deal. And then, the bad omens start, with the jaguar. And when the jaguar eats that one guy and you just see it clamp, I'm trying to the best of my ability to get away from the overlays all the time, so we could just, have the conversation. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. But that picture of that jaguar just clamped down on that guy's face.
Yeah.
And it's just, his face is coming off.
Yes.
It's a good scene. Yeah.
You're waiting for it. The guy's gaining on him, and he's running from this jaguar, and the other guy doesn't know it's there, and then all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah, it's just kind of this thing where the paths converge, and then he gets behind the guy, and he doesn't see the jaguar. And
I know blasphemy, when I'm watching that, again, I'm thinking of other movies, and in the second time, I'm like, ooh, that looks like the Forest Moon chase in Star Wars, Return of the Jedi with the speeder bikes. I'm like, ooh, that looks cool.
Well, I mean, from there, the people just start to get picked the fuck off, man.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you've got the snake bites that one guy. Then the waterfall scene happens.
Oh yeah.
And
how far is this guy gonna go? It's almost Ahab, like how he's forcing the rest of them to go. Like the one guy's being reasonable. Hey, can we climb down? We can catch up to him. And he's like, no.
Stabs him right in the the diaphragm.
Yep.
Just puts it right in there. He's like, we're going over, because he's killed his son, and so nobody's got an equal say. I mean, and they're all just these savages, but he's like the chief savage,
right?
Of all the slavers, they're all afraid of him.
Right.
So yeah, it's like a pecking order among devils or something like that. The one guy's the beast, that kind of thing.
That fear motivation is just everywhere in this movie, even though in the beginning he says, don't be afraid. Everyone's afraid. Everyone's motivated by fear. The people who are there being sacrificed, the people who are doing the sacrifices because they're afraid, the crops are dying, the eclipse is coming, the gods are punishing them. Everything is driven by fear. The first clan that they encounter, they're full of fear. And even Jaguar Paw has that fear in him until he goes over that waterfall. and then he gets some balls.
Yeah, he makes that. I don't know what it is. It's just something turns in him,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I don't know whether he realizes, wait a minute, what the hell am I doing here? You know, this is my forest.
Yep, and he's in his turf.
Yeah, and
he
he's like,
finds it
come
in
on
himself.
down. Yeah, come on. You know, my fault. You know, because I mean, they killed his father. You know, they destroyed his village, all of his friends. You know, and I think the anger also just comes bubbling up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he's just like, fuck you guys. You know, come on down here and, you know, show me what you can really do. And he just starts to pick them off one at a time because, like he said, and like we saw from the very beginning, he's a hunter.
Yep.
He's not a slaver. He's not a savage, but he knows how to kill.
Yeah.
You know, and he's more of a human being, well, than they are. I would argue those people have largely, you know, lost their humanity. And he just
You would
starts
say
to,
the soldiers or whoever, whatever you want to call them, military. They have discipline. They're people killers. They're proud of the knife that killed many lives, but they're not survivors. They're not. They're definitely not survivors like this kid.
yeah, 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 absolutely. I mean, we even saw that. Even among the slavers, there's, you know, kind of a hierarchy, and that man, he loves his son.
Right.
You know, he like hands his son the, you know, you can come and stay with us now. You've earned your place. You know,
Right.
he puts him through the paces.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not automatic advancement. You know, it's no. You know, you spent your time. You know, he gets his eye all fucked up. You know, and you know he does stand there. You know, let me, you know, cut that out. You know, he drains that hematoma.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when it's time to deal and negotiate for the slaves, you know, talk to my son. I'm taking off. You know, give him a good price, but you know, you deal with him.
Right.
You know,
So it's a parallel between him and Jaguar Claw and his father.
yeah,
There's still those relationships. There's still the shadows of that positive culture there,
yeah,
but they're still surrounded by all this corruption, and ultimately they're serving the corruption,
yeah,
even though there is that positive part of the culture, in that relationship between the father and the son.
yeah. So I mean, he eventually deals on all of these guys, especially that guy almost that calls him almost.
Yep.
But what really got me was when he gets the lead guy. I think it can't be right because it doesn't sound like a Mayan name, but I saw that his name was Zero Wolf, the leader of the slavers, and he gets him in that hunting trap.
Right.
And I just thought, is it a coincidence that he got caught the same way that a pig got caught?
Right. Right.
You know, that he's the pig.
Gotta admit, I saw that foreshadowing the first time I saw it, and I was waiting
Oh, did you
to
really?
see when it was going to happen. I knew that trap was significant for some reason, and when it sprung on him, I was just almost cheering in the theater, like, "Yeah, dude, you deserve that."
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That guy was a savage. These are barbarians. You know, these people were barbaric.
Yep.
And, you know, sort of the militant arm of, you know, that this sort of sadism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were like the executors.
Yeah,
You know, they got it done.
serving the corruption because
Yeah,
that's all they
exactly.
are.
Exactly. And so finally, you know, half run to death, he makes it out to the beach and the conquistadors are here.
Yeah, good scene, man. I didn't see that
Yeah,
coming though.
neither did I. Now, here's my question to you. What were your thoughts? I have two sets of thoughts the first time I saw this compared to because I just saw this today.
Uh-huh.
I just watched this today. The first time I saw this, I didn't, and I still kind of don't. I didn't view the conquistadors. I didn't view it as a good thing. I was like, oh shit, now they're really, it's over.
Right.
But I didn't necessarily view the conquistadors in a positive light. I don't think Mel Gibson was portraying them in a positive light. It was just kind of a reality. This new reality has occurred.
Yeah.
What I saw today, though, led me to feel that, okay, kind of the same thing. The conquistadors are here. This is the new reality, but also that this society, at least in the way that it was portrayed here, deserved to die.
Kind of, but you know that it doesn't 100% die. I don't know if it's just the way that I took it. There you go. The scene with the friar in one of the boats
Yeah.
was sort of, all right, the culture is going to die, or it's going to go through a change. And that brought me back to the very beginning when they encountered that fearful village trying to run for their lives. He says it twice. We're looking for a new
New
beginning,
beginning.
right? And that brings you to the fact that in less than, I think my years are correct, less than 15 years after this scene would have taken place, which is, I guess, about 1502, 1505, you would have uh, Don Juan Diego and the appearance of Our Lady of Guadalupe and the mass conversion of these Mayans over to Catholicism. And it was 100% a new beginning for the culture.
Was it a forced conversion?
I don't think so. No, not after the appearance of Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. You did mention that. Okay. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
So just for me, seeing the friar there is like, yeah, I know the conquistadors were brutal. They were assholes. They were just as brutal as the military arm of the Mayans that we just watched. But along with that came the Catholic Church and this new beginning for this culture, which had played itself out and could then at least intermingle with this new culture that came. And at the time, let's face it, it's the height of Christendom, and it is, a superior culture.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Um, let's see. Where does that leave us? Well, that leaves us where Jaguar Paw is reunited with his family.
Yep.
He does manage to save his family, but rather than join the Spanish, he goes deeper into the forest.
Right.
And that was another thing that sort of triggered the question that I had previously, in that he's skeptical. I get the impression he's, of whatever this is that they don't recognize. It could be the fact that he's seen enough for one lifetime. To have a little quiet time with me and the wife and the new baby and the kids, this kind of thing. But they just decide to retreat further into, and that was my interpretation of the new beginning, and that they sort of just went away from everything.
Well, the whole notion is that they were living as close to nature and as close to the original way as possible. So they actually had the superior culture, better than the conquistadors, better than the people in the city. And he was going to at least live through that, or live that life until things end.
Yeah. That's what you got my impression of it is that would be their life.
Mm-hmm.
That they would have that ability to remain, like you said, in the old way.
Yeah, you would hope.
Yeah, until things changed completely, and took over the entirety. Because I mean, the Mayan civilization wasn't just one small area.
Right.
It was an enormous tract of land down there, and those people are still down there today. Those indigenous people. And to some extent living in Mexico and the different areas down in the southern areas of Mexico and the connecting countries down there.
Yep.
To some extent still living indigenous lifestyles a little separate from the standard Mexican.
And and the pyramid is still there. It's hidden behind the titty twister truck stop. And they've all become vampires.
Well, Danny Trejo's still tending bar down there.
Right.
Welcome to the titty twister. Cheech Marin's out front, hanging out. Well, I mean, I can't say enough good things about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's on Tubi right now. Please
If you
check it.
haven't seen it, see it.
Yeah, put away. Please do your best, because I know some people, they refuse to do it, and they feel this way about Polanski. They can't separate the art from the artist.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, I'm not going. And you're fucking cheating yourself.
You're stupid.
That's the way.
The Beatles, John Lennon. You love the Beatles. John Lennon used to beat his wife. So
yeah. I
know
don't even love the Beatles,
Maxwell
but yeah,
Silverhammer.
I see your point. And you know, if a Mel Gibson movie is coming out, I'm going to see it. I own quite a few Mel Gibson movies. I've got to get a copy of Hacksaw Ridge, because I just think that's a fascinating story. And Andrew Garfield is a tremendous actor. And I was talking to Eric the other day. He's come a long way from Spider-Man. You know, those were the weakest of the Spider-Man, but I thought that Andrew Garfield at that time was pretty good.
It's a good actor. And then in The Social Network, fantastic.
I never saw The Social Network.
What?
I haven't seen Social Network.
Oh, well, there you go. I will suggest that. It's not as crucial as Apocalypto, but it's worth seeing.
No. All right. Well, if I get around to it one of these, you know, I do 100% of these shows. So that's a lot of screenings for me.
Yes.
You know, so like at the same time, like I was talking to you about like watching The Strain. You know, but at the same time, I'm like, fuck, you know, like watching anything else starts to feel a little tedious after a while, because, you know, I'm covering, you know, usually it's just 2 movies a week. It's just, so I'm like, okay, you know, but still.
That's the problem, man. I remember to do things just because you want to do them and not because you have to do them for this show. Yeah. It's the same as collecting records. At some point, it becomes a job trying to keep up and listen to all these things that you love, but it's a job. But you do it because you love it, but it's a job. So,
didn't Harvey Picard talk about that? Or collecting records?
Exactly. So, you know, what's his name? Playing Harvey Picard.
Paul Giamatti.
Yeah, Paul Giamatti. So, you know, just remember to do things just because you love it, because that's what you love. And,
I mean, you know, I was enjoying the shit out of The Strain. You know, I think you were right. The first 2 seasons were the best. Yeah. But it's still, you know, you got Guillermo del Toro, a Vampire Saga. So, you know, what's not to, you know, I'd be like that asshole we were talking about in the beginning. Oh, I'm complaining. I'm watching Guillermo del Toro do 4 seasons of a vampire apocalypse. You know,
I gotta watch this awesome vampire movie.
Not this. Another episode of the vampire apocalypse. Fuck. So, all right. I think that's as good a place as any to close it out. Don't be a complaining asshole. That's our message to you. And get to
do your best to keep our civilization from collapsing. Don't be an asshole.
Yeah, please don't be that guy or girl. My thanks to who?
Bill Quaddle.
Bill Quaddle. Okay, Bill Quaddle is here tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. Eric and the Walk the Cinema podcast, they're going to join us tomorrow night at 8:00 to check out some Mike Flanagan. This is our first time covering some Mike Flanagan. I fucking love Mike Flanagan. And we're going to be looking at a Stephen King adaptation of Gerald's Game. Heck yeah. Which is much more than it's about a hell of a lot more than a woman getting handcuffed to a bed. There's a hell of a good story there, and I can't wait to cover it. And then on Friday, I'm going to be on the Night Watch Zone. I'm going to be on there with Night, covering an old classic that's always fun to talk about, The Ghost in the Darkness. That's always a good one to shoot the shit about. My thanks to Bill the Yucca, you know, the Mayan Bill, and from the two of us, have a good night, everybody. Peace out.